Like what you see? Like to be in the know? Visit facebook.com/WBGU and like us today. Stay in touch with what's new at WBGU-TV, national PBS programs, local productions, station events, and more.
Model Ts came off the line in 1909, and they ran for almost 20 years.
The Model T was built for the mass market. It was built in a time when people were making maybe $5 a week. The cars sold for as cheap as $500. Technology really didn't change in the Model Ts up through 1927, which was the last year of production. They stayed the same because that was cheaper to do it that way. The assembly line was started in 1914. Prior to that, when Model Ts were introduced in 1909, they were assembled by a team of people. Maybe 5 or 6 people put one single car together. And then when the assembly line came along, it was much quicker to put a car together, and thus the price dropped.
It's interesting, though, that he would take and ship you parts. They would ship cars totally torn down, and then they would be reassembled at their destination.
A lot of Model Ts, it was the basic transportation. The front half of the cars is basically the same on all of them, and anything behind the steering wheel was optional. It could become a pickup truck, it could become an enclosed truck, it could be a basic platform to haul whatever you needed to haul.
When Henry started to make the Model Ts, you could get different colors. And then eventually, as Henry started producing them by the hundreds of thousands at a time, it came pretty simple to run that old car right down through the old black paint. Then in about 1924, they started to change and you could get some colors again. During that 20-year period of time, Henry Ford produced right at 16 million Model Ts. And at one time, Henry Ford was producing more Model Ts than all of the rest of the manufacturers of automobiles in the world. I'm Bob Torbett.
I'm Jack Putnam.
We happen to belong to a Model T club known as the Northwest Ohio Model T Club, and it happens to meet here at Jack Putnam's in Bluffton, Ohio, the first Wednesday of the month. I'd always been wanting an older car, and my first chance came about 12 or 13 years ago. I ran into a 1926 Model T touring car.
I got into this hobby primarily because those parts are available. The fun is the search for parts. You'll never know where you're going to find them, whether it be at a flea market, whether it be through the modern technology that's available today in that search, or whether it's just by dumb luck that somebody happens to say, hey, I've found the part and would you like to have it? Each of the cars in my garage, I got one piece at a time. It started out with a bare frame on a set of sawhorses. Everything is stripped down to its original part, cleaned, repaired if necessary, replaced oftentimes, and then reassembled. There's roughly 5,000 parts in each one of these cars, and each one of those parts has been on the bench itself in order to get it done. If the part is usable, I'll use it as is. If it's repairable, I'll repair it. If it's not repairable, I'll replace it. I have 9 cars in this stable. We started off with 1 back in '85, and I've been into the old car hobby for 40-some years. The cars that I have range from 1912 through 1927, with one holdover Model A dated 1930. Starting one is a little bit different to begin with. The electric starter didn't become available until 1919. So if you had a car prior to 1919, you had to hand crank it to start it. So basically you're going to pull it from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock, like so, in order to get it to start. But when you're pulling out onto the street, it's a 3-pedal on the floor type of car. There is no throttle on the floor. You have a forward speed pedal, a reverse pedal, and a brake pedal. The throttle is controlled by the steering column, much like old tractors were. Basically it's a 4-cylinder engine driving a transmission, and in that transmission there's the flywheel with its magneto, which generates power for the ignition, and then a single-speed rear axle. That was standard from Ford. Early cars came with a speedometer, but in order to reduce the cost, they eliminated that accessory. That reduced the cost by $5. All early cars had a lot of brass on them. Brass was easy to form, it made pretty looking parts, and most of that disappeared about 1916. The reason it disappeared was the fact that there was a war going on, and we sent a lot of the brass to Europe in the form of shell casings, and it became very hard to get in order to produce your brass car. Reliability is always a question with a Model T. There's nothing on a Model T system that doesn't have to be there. It has an ignition system, it has a fuel system, and that's it. If you keep it up mechanically, you're fairly reliable. Many of these cars were driven across country back when they were new. There are people who have driven them across country in the last few years.
I really like to take this piece of history and take it to the people. It's not something that you need to come here to this garage to see these beautiful cars of Jack Putnam's, or to come to my house to see my 3 cars, but consequently you can take and get in this Model T. You love to drive them, and we can take and drive around and people can see it.
Scenic Stops is brought to you by WBGU-TV. Support great local programming by giving now at wbgu.org/pledge.